Welcome to the Northside Fire District. This is a special meeting. It's 9:03 a.m. November 6, 2025. Commissioner Roof.
Here.
Commissioner Bowen.
Here.
And Commissioner Adams is here. Please be advised, anyone speaking from the floor will need to sign up at the front table. Give your full name and address when recognized by the chair. Please rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
What did I say? I do want to thank you. This is the most people we've had at one of our commissioner meetings in quite a while.
This is more than we've had. We added them all up for 8 years.
Good morning, 9 o'clock it is.
Don't say that.
While people are signing up, I will entertain a motion. Is there, we'll open the floor for public comment. Any public comment at this moment?
Robert Frank, Bonner County resident of the Westside Fire District. And I'd just like to advocate once again for a consolidation of the Westside and Northside's fire districts. I think that will make a far more efficient and effective department to have it all under one umbrella. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Okay, I just signed up. I guess we're here because we got handed a little bit of a crap sandwich right now, and trying to make some logical decisions about things. But I just want to express my sympathy and hope for these firefighters that are impacted by the recent vote, and to tell them that there are options out there. Look at USA Jobs, federal firefighters all across the nation. However you land, open yourself wide to opportunities everywhere. My son works at Hill Air Force Base, and they have 5 fire stations fully staffed, and they're opening up another one. They're going to be hiring probably close to 20 people sometime in the future. I don't have any more details than that, but it's a way of looking at this situation today and looking to the future and availing yourself to whatever opportunities out there for you. That's my pitch for you guys going forward on this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lucas Bloxham, I'm a firefighter here at Northside Fire. I just wanted to mention kind of my thoughts on how we've gotten here and what it means for the next steps as we move forward. Whether it was good or bad intentions, the previous administrations they were okay with just going by and keeping the status quo of the system of the insurance companies and how they do the ratings in this county, and we were fine with the way that the ratings were. Our district was fine with the way that the ratings were, and so when we had dwindling volunteers and we weren't as much of a force as we previously were, it was okay because the way the rating system, we still had stations out in the boonies with apparatus that may or may not have ran, and that allowed for us to, the way the rating systems worked, it allowed for us to keep continuing by. And when this administration came on, they were, you guys have been doing a good job of trying to say, hey, we shouldn't keep up with the status quo of, letting it all kind of fall apart, and we need to make a change. And it's hard to make change, and it's hard for the public to hear that change is needed. And I can understand that they don't really understand why, because it had been fine for so long. So I have heard the public, and I can appreciate the frustration they may have with us by trying to do better, provide a better service. But I don't know what to say. We have to do something because we're going to not exist anymore if we don't make a change. That being said, I'm sure there will be plenty of staff members that may want to make some comments, but we have asked to sit down with the chief and go over some of our own ideas. I think today we should allow the public to speak. We should hear from them, and I think the staff will have some suggestions to present to you sometime next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucas.
Tanner Wright, I'm a firefighter here. I just wanted to squash a big rumor that's been going on online publicly because this is a pretty big audience. Usually we're just talking to the commissioners. The talk of volunteers and the fact that we push them out as union members because of our strenuous requirements and so on is completely false. We don't have strenuous requirements of them time-wise, all of that. So I just wanted to squash that rumor in a big public setting. So that was it. Thanks.
Thank you, Lucas. Yeah. Ethan, did you have something?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if we were in comment or if we were actually doing that thing. So, my name is Ethan Colby. I'm a firefighter for Selkirk Fire and Rescue, but today I am here as a member of the public because this is a issue that will affect me. As it was stated, one of the big concerns is the Insurance Service Rating Bureau is going to be coming through and re-rating fire districts. And the biggest issue with that is if you don't have the staff or the volunteers, you pretty much default to a 10, which means you have no fire coverage. And for many, that's going to be no insurance, or for those of us that do live in areas, extremely high insurance, which is going to basically make most of our living situations untenable in the current market because it's ridiculous as it is. I think that House Bill 208 is probably the best method forward. Some of you have seen the presentation I presented on it, but at a minimum, it maths out that you would go down to 3 two-person stations and worst case scenario, lose one per shift. That would be the safer position. I think that's something that needs to be deeply explored by all departments as levies are very much unrealistic. We've seen that, it's shown throughout the state, and the funding for fire and emergency services in general needs to be fixed on a state level. The more we keep trying for levies, the more it shows that it's a temporary fix. We get a levy, and in 5 years with growth and the needs, we can't sustain it. It needs to be fixed on a state level. So I hope you guys please look at 208 and don't worry about levies being impacted when you make that decision, because this is going to affect me and everybody else that lives around here, and I don't want that to happen. I don't want to have to move and do all that. So thank you.
Thank you, Ethan.
I just would like to ask everyone to speak up. There are a number of people on Zoom that are interested to hear what we have to say and have been reported that they can't really hear us. There's nothing I can do with the audio system, but if you could speak up, that would be wonderful.
We ask them to walk forward when they speak.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, we have quite an audience.
Yeah, there's quite a few on there, I can see. Yeah, we'll just have people come up to the front when they speak so they're closer to the computer. Okay. Any other public comment? Mr. Korn.
I'm the one that will come up to the front, I guess. So I'm here today as a Northside Fire resident. Been here for 28 years. I've been involved with Northside Fire. I was a volunteer for a brief period of time many years ago. I know the previous chief quite well. I've seen the changes come and go here. I'd just like to say that the people spoke yesterday, good or bad for you guys. And one of the things that the community is seeing out there is that maybe there were some past decisions made that were not fiscally sustainable, as it looks like, and the people don't feel that it's their problem to try and fix by throwing money at it. This has happened many times in the past, not with Northside Fire necessarily, but with school districts. They have issues, they have problems. There's a problem on the west side of the county where test scores are super low and they think that they can fix the test scores by throwing money at it, and that just doesn't work. We have to get back to grassroots, build that foundation again before we put the new roof on the building. And I think one way of doing that, I think Northside Fire, and I'm just trying to give some positive feedback here, I'm not deaning you guys. I have some repairing to do with the public. You guys ran 2 levies. The public did not like either one of them. I think they may support you guys fiscally in a different manner, such as maybe a temporary levy, but a permanent override levy of 100%, and the last one being 200% or whatever it was. They're just, that's not on the docket for the people. Most of the people that are in your district are hardworking people. We're not rich people, and constantly in my job, I hear, how can we cut taxes? How can we cut taxes? We have the elderly people that are on fixed income here that really are having a hard struggle figuring out how they're going to sustain themselves for the next 10 or 15 years. And then something like this comes along and it puts a bad taste in their mouth. So I would suggest the board look at ways of doing some restoration of the public's trust. Whatever that can be, I don't know. That's your job. But what I would like to offer you guys, for myself, is that if you guys are interested in reviewing and amending your volunteer policies, I would volunteer my time to sit down with you guys at the table and see what we can do to try and rebuild that part of it. So that's my offer to you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron.
I'm Asia Williams. I am in Southwest Bonner County, so I'm not part of this fire district. I'm part of the Spirit Lake Fire District. And so we had a similar situation where we ran a full permanent levy. It didn't pass, but we got the 50%. So the second time around, we did a temporary levy that actually did pass in our area. So I'm kind of standing here to offer assistance in a different way because I think that you guys have produced a lot of information that you put in the public, and in some ways a lot of the public didn't come to hear information about the budget. But if you saw what was going on with EMS, I focused very hard on the budget, how to cut things, but also how to present to the community for change. I think that Ethan was absolutely correct. We have to change at the state level because the way in which EMS and fire get funded in this state is not sustainable. And so I'm offering assistance from the background of risk insurance and financial for whatever it is that the commissioners would like to tap into, but also community engagement. Chief Armstrong participated with a town hall before we voted down in the Spirit Lake area about our levy, and that's beneficial to do because there were people in that meeting that actually changed their position, being able to hear from the firefighters present. And I think that there's opportunity for the commissioners as a group to help get more people, because if this is the most that you had and we're running a levy talking about failure, that we have failed on that alone, that doesn't make us successful. And so if we put the information in front of people and once we gather it, we need to kind of work together as a community to get more people to know what you guys are talking about, because I've seen some of the books. The idea of volunteer firefighters in my area was always pitched, but the problem is we're an aging population with an understanding that volunteers are not free. It costs us to onboard a volunteer, and similar to what happens with our law enforcement, we pay to get people built up and then they move to another area. And so we have to look at that form of leakage from budgets too, and I think that that's also something that you guys have recognized as volunteers don't necessarily stay. It's not for a lack of not wanting that. So I'm just here saying, if you pull me into the conversation, I'll have the conversation with your group on whatever it is that you guys are looking for. I know with my particular area, we're trying to do a good job of taking what we got on that temporary levy and showing the public this is how your money was spent so that you gain that public support. So that's what I came here to hear from you guys, what you need, and to offer whatever it is that I can do to assist, even if it's just trying to get people in the room to help hear what you guys are talking about.
Thank you, Asa. Any additional? Derek?
Should I?
Yes, please.
Go to the computer?
I think you can project though.
Yeah, you're probably good.
I tend to project pretty well. So, my name is Derek Galler. I do live in the Northside Fire District, Sub-District 3. I've already volunteered to help. Planning to be sworn in January to allow Vern to retire. But I want to bring a facet that I haven't heard presented yet. And that is, we've heard about the citizens' costs that might be triggered by an ISRB rating and how that will impact cost of living. I think the public sees that as something that's more of a deferred cost, whereas the taxation cost will be immediate, and there are people right now being priced out of being able to live in Bonner County because of the taxes. And if they don't pay their taxes, guess what? Their property goes away, which is another problem in and of itself that is political and federal, and we're not going to spend time on it here. But I would encourage the board to, right now, start looking at other sources of funding. Simply saying that the levy failed and so now we need to hunker down and do all sorts of things that I don't think the public will find favorable. Okay, the 208 option, I don't think the public is going to find very favorable. It's kind of digging our hole deeper, if you will. If we don't start looking at additional sources of funding or other sources of funding, this problem, I don't believe, can be solved because people will not vote to increase taxes. They simply won't. Not by the margin we would need to pass a levy. And if they accept some sort of a lower increase, is that increase going to be sufficient to satisfy the funding needs, to keep coverage? I think we need to start thinking out of the box. We need to start thinking out of the box. We need to start thinking of ways other than taxes to fund what the community needs and to fund what the fire service needs. I know it looks glum right now. Okay, I know it's going to take time to generate. But heck, if we just said, well, we're just going to keep throwing the levy against the wall until it sticks, we won't be able to have another vote till May. We have months. I would like to suggest that we start exploring other options now. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Any other comment?
I'd like to follow up.
Go ahead.
So, I introduced myself earlier, Robert Frank. I live in the Westside Fire District. What I didn't tell you is my background. As a professional firefighter for 21 years, as a battalion chief. Some of the things I've heard are interesting. One of the things is there's an implication that the levy was defeated. Well, that's true because we were asking here for a permanent levy. But the voters came out and 51% supported the levy. If we'd been asking for a temporary levy, we'd be having a completely different conversation because we would have another 2 years of cushion to solve our overall problems. So I'd suggest that in May, we have to go again. Alternative sources of funding are an absolute great idea. That's going to require a change of the state law, which requires support from our commissioners and our local representatives and senator. That's going to be a time-intensive operation, and that could take years to occur. We don't have years in Northside Fire, we have months. Talking about who can afford to pay and who cannot afford to pay, there was a really popular motivational guy for business called named Zig Ziglar. And he had a story about a guy whose business was really having trouble, and the salesman was telling him, this fire protection system is really going to be great for your business. And the guy goes, I can't afford it right now. My business isn't doing that well. And he said, how well will your business be doing if it burns down? And the guy realized, oh yeah, I do need I do need this fire protection that this salesman is talking to me about. And who benefits the most from the services that we provide? Is it the guy living in the $1 million or $2 million house up on the side of the mountain? No. It's that vulnerable citizen on their fixed income that's struggling to get along. And they're the ones that have nobody else to call when they need help. They pick up the phone, they dial 911, and they expect us to show up. And we can't show up if we don't have money. That is the ultimate reality. So I'm not arguing with anybody who's spoken. Everybody has good and valid points. We need to figure out something that's going to work for everybody and that we can maintain, in a civilized society, a way to deliver public safety services. Otherwise, what are we as people? Anyway, thank you for letting me speak again.
Thank you. Seeing no other public comment, I will entertain a motion to adopt the order of the agenda as presented.
I'll make a motion to adopt the order of the agenda as presented.
Seconded.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt the order of the agenda as presented. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion will pass. All right. We will review the results of the levy on Tuesday, the 4th of November, and we will have discussion.
Is that me, sir?
Yes, sir.
All right. There's a handout that's going to select people, and it's not that they're my favorite people, but they're people that I've been trying to communicate with. I have a couple more up here. Ultimately, we can run some more copies, or you can email, and it's a public document. I'm happy to share it under public records. Actually, you don't even need to go to the public records request. Just send me an email. I'll email you the document. Didn't expect this level of turnout, so.
Is this what you were handing out?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
anybody else would like a copy? I'm willing to give up my copy.
I got 3.
Somebody would like one?
Same.
Oh, you're already ready to give it away?
I don't think you need to. I thought you wanted my copy.
I was trying to help you guys out by my service.
We appreciate your service.
You know,
Thank you.
Glenn, thank you for being an old man, for the senior.
So thank you everyone for being here. I'm going to take the first few moments of this meeting to go over a presentation to the fire commissioners who are my bosses. And the handout that I'm handing out is a list of recommendations. Some of them are bold, some of them I feel are common sense. None of these will probably be acted on today because I think that the commissioners need time to digest this information, and I need you to understand that these are my recommendations as their fire chief, both from an operational and a business perspective. Doesn't mean that if they go in a different direction, I'm not going to execute their vision. But as their fire chief, it's important for me to be able to stand up and tell them when there's cracks in the ceiling. And the analogy I always use is fire in a theater, right? We all are told not to yell fire in a theater. But when is it okay to yell fire in a theater? When you smell smoke? When you see fire? Both? I used the analogy a couple months ago. It said, I'm smelling smoke. Well, now I'm seeing fire. And I'm not trying to be melodramatic, but this is something that I'm very passionate about. As I go through this today, I may need to take a break. I may need to collect my thoughts. This was a very emotional for me yesterday, and it's going to be very emotional for me today. So, start out by talking to staff, firefighters. I value you, and as I talk about hard decisions that may have to be made, this isn't personal, this isn't directed at you, and this isn't, well, I want that person to go away. This is a business decision, a list of recommendations made to my bosses based on taking a look at the finances and the direction we're going. It also, to the public, it is also not meant to be, and I just lost the word, retaliatory. Right? What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to find our baseline. Thank you all for being here. Please be patient with me as I work through this. It went well yesterday. I don't think it's going to go as well today. Asia and Ron, if I can be so bold as to call you that instead of commissioners, thanks for being here. I've really tried to engage with you. Ron, I'd love to sit down and talk to you about volunteer firefighters. I started as a volunteer. I've nurtured combination departments my whole entire career. When I stepped in as Northside Fire Chief, as a volunteer basis, and then we solidified that through a contract, we actually brought on more volunteers and had an academy. And those people have scattered. I'm not going to beat up the dead horse. What I don't want to do is beat up the volunteer program today, because that's a whole nother discussion. It doesn't solve our immediate issue. And I don't want to focus on decisions of the past. Yes, some decisions in the past led us to this, but this is where we're at. People make decisions in the past based on the best information in front of them in that space and in that time. They don't have the ability to look forward. They don't have the ability sometimes to even step back to the 40,000 foot level and understand what things are going to change. I was here for some of the enhancements and services. I was concerned about the budget. We were all concerned about the budget, but we were trying to grow Northside commensurate to the needs of the community. We were watching a volunteer fire program fail. And so we were trying to augment that, because showing up to a structure fire with one firefighter on a fire engine is not a model that's sustainable, it's not a model that's safe, and it's not effective. And I will make the bold statement today that I will not be the fire chief of an organization that does that. I mean no disrespect to my bosses, but I can't go in that direction. I can't sleep at night knowing that one of my guys or gals may show up in that situation. That's how passionate I feel about this. And I slow played this for my first couple of years in Idaho. Well, this is culture, this is that. And then I had specific incidents that occurred where our folks were put in harm's way. So we have to ask ourselves, what's better? A 10-minute response time and 2 people show up on a fire engine, or a 5-minute response time and 1 person shows up on a fire engine? I'm going to tell you, if we put EMS aside, because it's not our primary mission, if we put EMS aside, it's going to be 2 firefighters showing up, because they can instantly go to work, and they're not putting them in a situation where they're going to enter into a structure and get trapped themselves, or as Captain Frechette did, climb into a vehicle that was unstabilized to pull a lady out when he's all by himself. If that vehicle had shifted, he would have then been trapped or killed. So I want to start back to staff and just reiterate. So the decisions that we're going to talk about today, I don't anticipate decisions today, but they aren't personal. Understand they come from a business place. They come from what our available resources are, what our available funds are. And those are very uncomfortable conversations, because I've been able to kind of navigate my way through the fire service, through ups and downs, scaling, what I call scaling, which is a business term. We have to kind of cut back, and I've never had to lay off firefighters, and I've been successful. When I left California to come here, I actually was faced with having to let my battalion chief go. And I said, I've got a solution. I'm going to go to Idaho. Here's the money you can save from the fire chief's job. Put him in the fire chief's job, and we all leave happy. They were stoked. I gave them 60 days notice. I stayed on with them for another couple months as a consultant, and I nurtured and mentored that guy into the role. So that's kind of how I've been. So some of the things we're going to talk about today is what happens if I go away. Will that solve the problem? So why are we here? We're here because the levee failed, but we're also here because we've been heading towards this precipice and towards this situation where our current operations are not sustainable. They do not fit within our current budget, our current revenue. We've had to make decisions on selling apparatus, selling assets, pulling from reserves to make this work. We're also here because our community is growing and the demand of our services are growing. If you haven't noticed it, or if you guys aren't aware, that recently we actually scaled back the number of EMS calls we go to try to retain our 25-year-old fire engines, keep the wheels from falling off of them, and also to make sure our responses are right size. This was a coordinated decision between the EMS chief and myself to pull back from certain calls, understanding they can always call us if they need us, or if something in the notes looks like the call notes, which we get on our MDC, our mobile computers. But if something looks like they need extra help, they can always call for us. And I believe that has happened a couple times. But I'm the first fire chief that stood up and said, hey guys, it's broken. And I have all the feelings about property taxes, and that part of it's broken too, but just simply the fire service in Bonner County is broken. I think we all are here because we know that. And I'm the first one that said that. And I got all the hate for it. Well, everything was fine under Brad. Okay, it's not fine now. And if you want to blame me, that's fine, and I'm okay with that. Blame me, get rid of me, fire me, I'm good with that. Doesn't fix the fact that the fire service in Bonner County was broken. I'm the first one to boldly stand up and say that. And I believe, because I'm biased towards myself, that it was because I peeled back the onion and I looked at where we're going and I think strategically and I'm looking at where we're headed and I'm looking at the finances and I'm looking at trying to hold together 25-year-old fire engines. And I'm telling these guys, my bosses, that we have no plan. We'll talk about that a little bit in my recommendations. We have no plan. We have no capital savings. And then that's not a knock, and I'm going to be very blunt and try to be respectful at the same time, but that's not a knock. I think every intention was to save, and money had been allocated. The problem is every budget year, we were peeling that money over, and I watched it with the SCBA money. We were doing our due diligence to save money for what we knew was coming up, but we were peeling that off and having to put that into apparatus repairs. What was our last apparatus repair budget? We went over, was that 100, where's Tanner?
62,000.
Yeah.
No, we went over though.
No, yeah, that was our line.
But that was our $62,000 a year to keep these things on the road. And I want to say we exceeded that by 20,000. Yeah.
It's like 84,000.
84,000 said and done? Okay. That's just an example, right? Then I get our renewal on our insurance. Our liability insurance goes up 20%. That's not something I get to negotiate. Work comp goes up. Yeah, work comp's a small thing, 4%. But I mean, all these things, you start adding 4% here and 20% here. Personnel is the only thing we can control. And that's unfortunate. Benefits cost money. Employees cost money. And we find ourselves in a situation where we cannot sustain the current budget. And I'm not going to get into details. We can if people either want copies of the budget or if they want to ask about specific details. I do want to address a rumor that's out there that I saw on a pop-up website that, this conversation between Northside and Westside coming together, that's an effort to somehow prop up Westside. I'm going to speak now, if I may. I'm going to put my Selkirk hat on. And I'm going to say that the fire districts of Selkirk are solid financially. They have healthy reserves and they're spending within their budget. Any discussion about bringing Northside into some sort of solution is to help Northside. And I don't mean this, I'm going to be blunt. We could step away from this and be perfectly fine. And I could probably sleep at night a lot better. Selkirk is solid. We've made some adjustments. Yes, we asked for levy. Public said no. We shifted things around. We adjusted. And we're moving forward. We now have a capital specifically in Sagal, and I'm looking at you because you're a Sagal commissioner. Specifically in Sagal, we actually have now allocated more money for the capital needs that are coming up. I have a projection of 3 to 5 years. These are the things that we're going to do. Past administration, get a grant. Get a grant. Get a grant. I love grants, but get a grant can't be a business model. And as we're learning here, get a grant can't be a staffing model either. The amount of reserves that we may talk about, I just want to talk this. We actually researched this week. So the government, I don't know what it is. It's GFOA. I don't know what that stands for. Government Finance.
Office of Accounting.
They say you're supposed to have 16.7%. It's really weird that it's 16.7%. 16.7% of your operating budget in reserves. That doesn't work for these fire districts. Because the way our money comes in, it's a 2-year drop. We get little, what I call mailbox money. We get little surprise checks throughout the year. But we get 2 big dumps. January and June. It might be July. I don't remember. But we get 2 big dumps. Some of those may be less than what we expect. This last year, we saw $80,000 in unpaid property taxes to the Northside Fire District. At $20 per 100,000, that's a lot of unpaid property taxes. So there are things like that. There's also unknowns. Right now, where we sit, if we have a storm and the fire station roof blows off, we cannot afford to fix that. That's a problem. So I think we have to step back and take a look at what does a reserve look like. So the way we budget, and I say we, and we're all a team, but I'm going to just say from Selkirk and what I've learned stepping up from deputy chief to fire chief, is that we budget in line with our property taxes coming in. We try to do our best to anticipate capital needs. We have that plan built out for years. We budget with some cushion, right? But at the end of the day, a budget is a guide. And if you have to dip into reserves for the wheels fall off a fire engine, or something happens, or you drive through a bay, or you have a volunteer back into a station, and you have these things happen, then we do have those reserves to dip into. So really what we do is we budget within the means that the public has given us, because we understand that we're supposed to spend that money, right? Really, that's the intent, is to spend that on the service. We shouldn't have $18 million in the bank and have fire engines that are falling apart. And then what ends up being in there, it ends up almost being about 6 months worth of operating. Because if something happens, we have that. If the checks are late, county doesn't print them off fast enough, I'm just joking, right? If something happens, or if we start seeing a trend like a shortfall, we have that. There's two portions of budgeting. There's the document, right, where it says what I can spend. You tell me, hey, chief, you can spend this on whatever. Then there's the cash flow. And if you're not watching both, you end up like other organizations where you don't end up at a point where you can't make payroll. That's why we're here today. I think we have a problem coming in January. I'm hopeful that it's not. You guys have given us great guidance and taken decisive action to get rid of some equipment. We're looking at surplus and some land. My concern is that's kicking the can down the road. And I want to kick the can down the road as long as I can so that these men and women can go home and feed their families. I do. But I have to tell you we're kicking the can down the road. And if we want to do that, that's fine. I will take your direction. But that's where my concern is. That's the reason I called for this, is because if I'm not doing this and I'm not raising the alarm, I'm not doing my job. We've had a recent meeting with a few folks inside the department to talk about what are we missing? What are these unanticipated, or what are these unrealized sources of revenue, right? And the second page of the handout kind of has some of those, and I'll touch on them really quickly. Also, what are some cost savings, right? And I appreciate Derek's comments about looking for alternative sources of revenue. The problem is that doesn't fix it now, and it doesn't fix it by January. We talked a little bit about what does City of Ponderay feel, right? Do they want to come in and be a partner? Are there any opportunities with them? Are there any services we can provide for them in exchange for some sort of possible partnership? We put Ponderay down the side of the fire engine and sell them an advertisement, right? Give us $1,000 a month and we'll put your name on the fire engine, right? Oh, these are all outlandish ideas, right? But nothing, the idea that's dumb is the one that's not brought up. Can we increase our fees? Well, the commissioners have seen all the plethora of emails, me talking about fire sign-offs, and I'm sure we'll visit on that again soon. I don't want to raise the fees, right? Even the fire sign-off. We ask for a little $15 kind of, hey, help us out. Some people pay, some people don't. We don't really send people to collections for that. But I'm not looking to charge them $150 to do a fire sign-off. In fact, I'm trying to not do the fire sign-offs. I digress. But you know, I can go to Home Depot and I can do a fire inspection, and I can run through there and I can say, you need to have a high pile storage permit, that's $110. You need to have this permit, you can have that permit, you need to pay us for an inspection. I get done at Home Depot, I've spent 2 hours there, and I can send them the bill for $800. I'm not opposed to that, but is that the government organization we want to be? Because I will tell you, I came from a place where your annual fire inspection bill was $1,100 from the fire department. And we would literally walk in and, you got fire extinguishers? Okay, see you later. And we'd send them an $1,100 bill. That's what I tried to get away from, right? That's not what I want to do here. If it means keeping the lights on, maybe it's something we have to visit. Lease out the facilities. The fire station's not being used. You know, we have a fire station at Samuels. And I had a conversation recently with some people, and I said, well, this is a fire station. And they said, no, it's not. Stop saying it's a fire station. It's not a fire station. You don't have anything in there. You don't have any people responding to it. Stop saying it's a fire station. What are you going to do? Are you going to lie to ISRB and tell them it's an operational fire station so somebody within 5 miles can get, right? So maybe we care. Maybe we do want to put an engine there, because I will say that ISRB looks to see if you have a station, you have an engine in it, and then they don't ask you about your capabilities. They just give you points for having a station and an engine. And I understand that. And I'm not saying we take that value away from the community, but if we could lease the Samuel station out for $2,000 a month to a construction company, that's revenue that could be coming in. Some outlandish stuff like, do we lease out part of this to the City of Ponderay? The City of Ponderay wanted the station, I think, for a while. They own the land, we own the building. There's a dynamic there. Do we rent out a portion of it to it? Do we just sell it to them? We'll talk a little bit about the staffing opportunities. Should we'd be looking at contracts for services, and I can answer more questions about that, what that looks like. I guess I'll dive into that. So just hypothetically, if we were to say Northside wants to join the JPA or doesn't want to join the JPA, if we were to approach Sagal Fire District, for instance, and say, Sagal Fire, instead of this JPA thing, we just want to sign a contract. Sagal Fire provides this level of service for the residents of Westside and Northside. And we were to go, that's a different business model, achieves the same thing as a JPA, except Sagal now is running that, right? What you get from that is whatever Sagal's ISRB rating is, gets applied to the contract agencies as well. So the contracts have to pay for themselves. So those two districts would come in and they would say, this is our level of service we want. Here's how many staff members. Here's the services that you'll provide, and we'll cut a check annually. There has to be some benefit to Sagal, but the benefit to Sagal to being in the JPA or even being a part of any of these conversations is when something happens in Sagal, they need our help. We all need each other. And that's, I don't think, what people really understand is if the first levy had passed and you could get your own fire chief and you could staff both stations and whatever else, I understand the ask was too big for the community, but if you went in that direction, then you could kind of tell us to go away, right? You'd almost have your own fire department and you'd almost be self-sufficient. But we're not in that situation with any of the fire districts. And so we all need each other. Just finding a way to make it work so that one district doesn't suffer and to make sure that the funds are expended correctly is, I guess that's my and Tammy's job. But we looked at a couple things, and these freaked some of my staff out, but I looked at dropping to part-time myself. What would the savings be there? I also looked at just canceling the contract with Northside and saying, you don't need Tammy's and my services. Here's what that would save. Both fall short of fixing the need. Both will save you money. And I would recommend the not dropping to part-time. Not that I wouldn't be happy to go do something else to augment my life and income until I retire, but I do whatever I need to do for the team. But I think what you're doing then is then you're shorting the other districts, right? Sagal, and I'm not going to speak for you, sir, but Sagal's not going to want a part-time fire chief just because Northside can't afford a full-time fire. You know what I mean? So. And then to the point, I'm already kind of a part-time fire chief for the 3 districts. So it's really tough to really scale that back anymore. But if you did cancel the admin contract with Selkirk, there is some additional savings that you could allocate towards maintaining your operations and staffing. And then you would just have to address the leadership component and what that looks like going forward. We talked a lot about volunteers. I'm not going to talk about that anymore, but I am going to say that there's some internships and other ideas that are out there. Volunteers aren't in the station getting in the engine and under 90 seconds of the alarm going off and driving out the door. That's what we're trying to solve today. We're not trying to solve the force multiplier, which is the volunteers coming in 10 to 20 minutes after the call. We're talking about the initial people out the door. But there are opportunities for internships. Apprentices, we used to call them. You give them a small stipend, they come in and they work a 48.96 and they work alongside the paid staff, and they're working towards getting their qualifications, and then they leave and go get a job in the fire service, because that's really who's volunteering anymore, is people that want to be in the fire service. Talked about being a 501(c). Great idea for bringing in revenue. It doesn't solve our problem by January, and it also doesn't solve our business model. You can't run a fire district off donations, hopes and dreams, subscriptions. It just doesn't work. You have to have a budget, you have to have a service level, and you have to know what to go for there. As minimal as it is, you have to. I think we really need to start having conversations and lobby for a change in the way impact fees. We have a significant amount of impact fees, and by law we can't touch them. We can't solve our issues. We can't pay for increased staffing, increased service. It's very particular, and you're the expert at that, but it's very particular on what we can spend our money on. So when people say, well, what's with all these people moving here? Why aren't they paying their fair share? People first need to understand how the budget is done and how we get our revenue. And then second, they need to understand impact fees. I just saw a comment on Facebook the other day saying, I paid Northside Fire over $1,000 to build my new home. Where's that money going? I'm here to tell you it's in the bank. We can't touch it unless I'm doing very specific things attributed to growth, and no, it's not staffing. And no, it's not replacing a fire engine. And then last but not least, Idaho Department of Lands has approached me about paying for some staffing in the summer. This is a 6-month solution, but maybe it's something that we kind of hybrid work towards augmented service. They would like to see basically that's a Type 6 engine or a brush engine that the guys are leaning up against. They'd like to see one of those staff in the area. They would like to pay cooperators to do that. They are also interested in leasing some of our fire stations to put their equipment and apparatus there. So I know I've talked for a long time. Thank you for letting me share. I'm going to run through my recommendations, and again, understand these are recommendations coming from my office, from my position. I'm going to be I'm going to be an alarmist a bit, right? Try not to be dramatic, and I'm going to lean on I'm just concerned about the money, right? I'm very, very concerned when we start seeing that our budget deficit is greater than our reserves, and that worries me, right? And so I see that as a trend, and I know we're selling equipment, but we're getting into winter. The equipment hasn't sold. We have no guarantee that we'll sell it. I think we have a high probability of selling it, but again, this is a temporary fix. My recommendations to you to take and consider, and again, I would ask that you don't make any decisions today, that you take the weekend, that you allow me to meet with the staff on Saturday, that you allow us all to digest this, but this has been something I've been working on for a couple months. So I am recommending that we, again, this is hard to say, but reduce the career paid staffing to balance the budget. That would leave us with one person on duty, which I have already said I don't support. So therefore, my recommendation would be to pair that person up with a Westside firefighter and have an adequately staffed fire station with paid career folks that can respond to both districts. Return the Ponderay Station to volunteer only. Submit a formal request to the Selkirk JPA to join, which has already been somewhat discussed but decided against. But at this point, that's the only way that I think we can share staff. Continue selling the engines as planned, the Pierce and the tender pumper 1422. Return those funds to reserves. Explore selling the land. And this is where I'm throwing a new idea at you. Take that land, the money from the land, and put it in a fund for a new engine. We have no capital savings. We have no plan to replace an engine. And I'm only going to be able to keep these 25-year-old fire engines on the road for so long. And we saw with the Pierce what happened. We bought a used engine. We thought it was great. It got here. It fell apart on us, right? Then we got these American LaFrances. They're performing well. But at some point, parts availability is going to be an issue, and reliability is going to be an issue. The $300,000 would be a nice nest egg for 2-3 years from now to either build on that or to go out and leverage an engine like Selkirk just got, low mileage, extremely good, just in better shape. The volunteer programs have proven to be unreliable for immediate emergency response. We have volunteers, we love them, but every major structure fire we don't have a volunteer there. So how do you, other than keeping them here and keeping them prisoner, like how do you get them to show up on a fire? So I would say we explore internships, apprenticeships, or other training positions would require funding and personnel to manage. So again, we would have to go back to the budget and figure out how to do that. But there'd be no reason why we couldn't pull some of those people here. So you do 6 months with us, we're going to put you through a Firefighter 1 Academy and cut you loose and let you go realize your dreams of a fire service career. Long term, I think we should enter into discussions with the City of Ponderay about this building, and then using the funds potentially from a sale here, we explore a more centrally located fire station for both Northside and Westside. And again, this is me going back to our baseline of sustainability. This is me looking at what model can I put in service tomorrow, operate within our budget, and then a year, 2, 3 years from now, talk to the public about, is this meeting our needs or is this not? I'm going to say something that's really bold here because we go to NFPA 1710, and you know what that is, and we talk about the 15 firefighters, the 18 firefighters, the 25 firefighters, and the 45 firefighters that show up. National Fire Protection Association has standards for the fire service, and if Walmart were to catch on fire, they tell me as the fire chief, you should have 45 firefighters there. That's not going to happen, right? We don't have 15 firefighters at a structure fire. That's not going to happen. So I think we need to start understanding what our standard is. NFPA 1710, as great a document it is, and as much as there's some things in there we can glean from it and say this is industry best practice, number one, it's not a law. Number two, it's written by a bunch of people that work in Atlanta, Chicago, New York, all these cities where they have more resources than they know what to do with, right? And so they're not practical for rural America, rural North Idaho. So when we start talking about shifting personnel, we talk about maybe not having a response out of Ponderay, but that coming from somewhere else, or we talk about having 2 staffed engines to protect about 20,000 people, that's not unrealistic. And a 10 to 15 minute response time up to 20 or 30 in some areas, which like Sagal would have, north part of this district would have, people moving to Idaho understand that, or they should understand that. The people that have showed up and came to the Kerrywood Fire Station and said, what do you mean you're not paramedics? And I said, well, when you were in California, it's a little different, right? I just made the assumption because they thought we had paramedics on our fire engines, and I know we don't. So I would present that to you as we need to stop holding on to what we have, and we need to start thinking differently. And I know it'd be uncomfortable to say, well, the response is coming out of Dover. But your options are either that, or your options are to have one firefighter here on duty and accept that risk, allowing them to roll out the door with no guarantee of support or backup, right? Sandpoint could be busy and Selkirk could be on another structure fire. That is going to happen at some point where, oh, actually it's already happened, the 4th of July fire, where the Army surplus was burning down. I had a structure fire and it was me and 2 guys on an engine, and that was it. Couple thoughts at the bottom of this page. It says we cannot run a fully staffed fire station of 2 per day or 6 total firefighters and a district of 4 stations on $650,000. That's been proven. Every exercise we've run through here, we can't operate within our budget. We either cut or we keep selling things till we're out of things, or a levy passes. Northside can only afford 4 paid firefighters in the budget. If you want to match the budget to the revenue is what I'm saying. The combined annual budgets of Westside and Northside are approximately $1.3 million. This becomes a more sustainable budget to work with when seeking to staff a station, staffing and cost and operations. And I want to be very clear, and I've said this publicly, and this is where Bob and I always agree to disagree. I'm not a proponent of 2A. But I am a proponent of what we're doing, and I am a proponent of leveraging resources and figuring out ways to work together. And then last but not least, and this is capitalized, and I hope you guys take this with all due respect as my bosses, I will not support firefighters working alone. And that's my presentation. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Chief.
Comments?
I do have one question since we have representatives from Westside. We talked a little bit about it yesterday. I have a serious problem with, I mean, certainly I don't think any of us want to go back to 1 firefighter, but I have a problem with shutting down the Ponderay station. To my fellow commissioners, what are your thoughts about some type of arrangement about a brownout, where if we were to go ahead and work out something, we could get the 2 firefighters on for safety, that they would be here for 48 hours, and they would be at Dover for 48 hours. The Dover station would be unmanned at 48 hours at a time. The Ponderay station would be unmanned for 48 hours at a time. That way it's being spread across both districts. And once again, I'm looking for feedback from my, I was told to please project my voice. So I'm looking for feedback from my fellow commissioners. I know it's a big ask. I know that we're all going to have to give up something. I know that our Westside brother commissioners, there have been a lot of issues there. They've been trying to work together with Selkirk, but I'm just wondering, is that a viable option since we don't ever want to go back to 1 firefighter? Can we do a brownout, which is common in other cities?
Can I jump in while you're formulating your thoughts?
And I don't necessarily need, I don't necessarily need the answer today. It's just something to formulate in our plan as we go forward.
We're looking for an accommodation and a solution. And I think in making the decision,
Could you speak up and say who you are so we have it on the record?
Berlin Glass, Westside Fire
Thanks.
District.
Appreciate it.
Form follows function. And it trying to determine between a solution and a accommodation. That's really an administrative decision. I think the model that the chief lays out is to utilize our firefighters in the best form that you can. And that's really where our shortfall lies. But you look around, you got commissioners here, we have no problem with administrative. We got a problem with operations. So what do? Chief laid out some options. I've always looked at it like, okay, having an unmanned fire station is really not having anything, because this job purely revolves around the firefighter, that core element that does the job. Not the building, not geography. I mean, those are limitations. Sharing the pain is what you're trying to describe. I don't know how that gets us any more operationally effective. Whether all the firefighters are here or all the firefighters are there, they're going to make the same response. I hadn't thought of that, but I don't see that as a solution to our core element that we're suffering with right now, with not having enough firefighters. And until we get that money stream in there to change that, the Dover station is probably the only station that has the capacity to house the number of firefighters that we would like to have, in the future going forward, has multiple bays, and I don't know. That's a chief operation decisions.
Once again, normally a brownout would only be for a temporary period of time until we get.
To my fellow commissioners, let's be very cautious and not ask specific questions to our fellow commissioners due to quorums.
Okay.
We can't have them make any decisions since it is not recognized, so we do not want to do that with our friends from Selkirk, Westside, and Bonner County, since we both have commissioners.
Mr. Chair, and that's why I wanted to jump in, because I was trying to run some interference for my bosses. So I'm going to speak for them, and they can chastise me later.
Right, we can do that. Just be aware of that, just so we have it on record.
Good point.
We are.
I feel like
thank you, Tammy and Glenn, also for.
I feel like I expended a lot of fire chief credits in getting the new model to work, right? When we pulled back, when we decided to make our operational more sustainable and get back to that higher percentage of operations cost and bring personnel down to under 80, which is what our goal was, right? I went to them with a creative staffing solution that puts 2 people, not on the same apparatus, but puts 2 people in Dover. That was a big decision and a contentious decision to move from the middle of the district, right, Renco, to Dover. And I know it was hard for some folks. I feel like I threw all my chips on the table, and for me to even entertain the option of moving folks again, operational nightmare. No offense. I can't have one station in service one day and one station in service the other. It doesn't work that way with our dispatch system. Not impossible, but it would create an operational nightmare, and I think it would be really hard for dispatch to understand, especially when you're crossing districts. But we finally reached in Selkirk, we have reached that foundation, right? We've got the new staffing model. We're starting to understand how it works. We're starting to understand the swing position. And we're starting to build on that culture of folks falling into place, working with their folks, working with the staff. So I would caution you against doing that. The other thing that I would say, and this is a bold statement, but if Northside wants some solutions, Northside's going to have to kind of come in and give up something. It's not an easy decision for me to say, let's put the station back to volunteer, right? We already know what the volunteer program looks like, so the response out of here is going to be less than 10%, right, of the calls. And they're going to have to respond through the city of Sandpoint. But is an 8 to 10 minute response time unrealistic for North Idaho? I think the public has made that decision. And I understand, and I want you to speak, because staff does not agree with me on this. But I'm also not emotional, and I'm also not trying to hold on to what we've had, and I'm also new here, and I'm trying to look at it from black and white, what makes sense. Whereas the staff, and they should speak, are losing their department, their station, and their identity. And I don't want that for them either. But I also don't want them to run on a fire engine by themselves. And if they're willing to accept that risk, then they need to communicate that to you, and then we can have a conversation about whether I should be your fire chief or not.
Connor.
My name is Connor Robinson. I'm a firefighter here at Northside Fire. I feel like I have a responsibility to the Northside Fire taxpayers to speak up. It's not that we're talking about an 8 to 10 minute response time. It's an additional 8 to 10 minutes on top of the already 20 to 35 minute response time areas of our district. We're talking the North End, Elmira, Upper Samuels. Instead of being roughly 30 minutes, we're talking 40 minutes, 45 minutes. That's a house on the ground. That's someone's trapped in their car for that amount of time. Merlin, over here, sorry, Commissioner, mentioned that the Dover station is the only one with the capacity to house and outfit that level of staffing. We're talking about 4 firefighters. We have 4 bedrooms here, a 2-bay station, and if you're running 4 firefighters at one station, that's realistically 1 engine. We have 1 engine in our 2-bay station. To ask the Northside Fire District taxpayers to supplement Westside, yes, we're also in a shortfall. We are struggling. We need to find a solution. But to ask Northside to move its resources 8 to 10 minutes further away to supplement a district that runs 50 to 150 calls a year from a district that runs nearly 1,000, we're already sacrificing. We are talking about losing over half our staff. Our brothers and their families are going to be suffering. So if we're talking about laying stuff out on the table, we are suffering. We are giving up. But should the taxpayers give up that response? You say they don't care about response times, but they will when the time counts. So.
Thank you, Connor.
Thank you.
Any additional comments?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
On your budget, when you look at your budget as a whole, and maybe this is to Chief Armstrong, are you able to keep it running? It's just the timing of the money hitting your account. So when you talked about your drop of your taxpayer money from it's January and June, is it that when you get funded, you don't have enough? Or is it totally what it costs to operate, you don't have enough?
What it costs, the conversation about the drops was just to relate that to cash flow, because we're going to have a cash flow issue this year. But the separate discussion, and the reason we have a cash flow issue is because we have a deficit budget.
So your overall budget is not sustainable.
Correct.
Exactly.
And so part of my concern when I hear you talk is not just that, obviously you have to make those adjustments, but one of the things that I haven't heard you guys identify is when you're in this situation and you reasonably have to look at staffing, what happens with staffing is then they don't feel confidence in the foundation, and then they look elsewhere, which can erode the system faster than what you're even anticipating, because they don't see a plan that says, how am I going to keep my job if there's a staffing issue and we're thinking of a different staffing model? Because my thought was, if it's just about where you drop, where the money drops in, have you guys looked at your TAN option ability? Because that's not an uncommon thing either.
That won't fix it.
It won't fix it, but it might get you through a period of time that lets you, and I don't know, but that was just a thought of if that would help you get through until you hit a period where you could increase revenue, like making an arrangement with IDL and looking at some revenue stream.
It would, but I think what we're doing is, number one, I don't like TANs, and I'm trying to prevent that. But second of all, I think we're using the equipment sale and the talk about the land as that, right? To not only pick up the shortfall in the budget, because if we sell the equipment, we could probably be okay for 2 years. The cash flow is kind of a separate issue, and we can work through that, right? But the bigger issue is that and I don't have the exact number, I know we shaved it down after the budget was approved, but we're about 200,000 over. And so how do you make that up? You can't stop putting fuel in the fire engines, right? You can't stop paying a Vista, they'll come out and turn the lights off. So the only way for me to make it up, and this is the same conversation I had at Selkirk, the only place that I can make this up is staffing. And I don't know how to get this message out. Maybe if people understood the totality of the situation, they would either say, we don't care, or we want you to be, because there are people that want us to be 100% volunteer. I say good luck, but it's not, I mean, right? Because I've been living in that world for 25 years, and people walk through the door, come to our meetings, and the most dangerous people are the ones that think they know things that they don't know. Because you have to talk to those people about things. So the volunteers aren't going to solve the problem, right? But if the community wanted us to go back to all volunteer, if the community expects us to drive around in purple fire engines with one person on them, then we do what the community wants. Doesn't mean I have to be okay with that model, and doesn't mean I have to accept the risk to be the fire chief.
So you need to cut over $200,000 from your budget annually, period.
Roughly.
Or bring in more revenue.
Can I have a slush fund?
Well, no, I'm trying to think of where because in part, you're not, like, even with equipment sales and land sales, those are not happening tomorrow so that the money gets dropped in. So that's where my comment on the TAM was, really is there an opportunity to kind of float you over until you could get some of that money put in your account? But even when you put the money in the account, it sounds like you want it to be put in reserve for additional repairs related, not putting it in as a temporary fix, because it would be temporary for staffing, or staffing.
I mean, that's my recommendation. I'm going to do whatever the bosses want. But
I'll just say that's not a want thing.
Yeah.
We need to have some reserve. And as he said, if the roof blows off tomorrow, we're going to be putting blue tarps up there.
Yeah.
So that's not a want, just to make that distinction.
And just for the
It's a
people
need.
that are here, there's a lot of assumptions about our budget. It's the most interest we've ever had. We tried to gain this interest. Come in, ask for a copy of the budget, or sit down and I will walk you through line by line on the budget. If you think that there's money, I've seen everything all over Facebook, that we're embezzling, that we're wasting money, that we're this, that we're that. Yes, did we increase our capacity? Did we spend some money because we couldn't keep a fire engine on the road? Yeah, we had an obligation to the public because our fire engine was breaking down on the way to fires. How do I explain that to the public? So yes, we had to do something with our fleets. Our solution? Bought a 25-year-old fire engine. Please tell me where the waste is.
Of all those accusations, there has not been one person who's taken us up to come in and look at the books and show us where there's any waste, fraud, abuse, any of that. And it's all over social media. It gets said in county meetings, and not one taker has come to show where there's any of that. Not one. And the invitation has been, I have put it out over and over and over. Chief has put it out. We all have. It gets old after a while.
The only accusation that's true is I'm from California. And if people don't like me for that, then I'll go away. But the people that don't like me for being from California are from California or New York themselves.
Yep. Bastard.
We finally said it.
And now they're coming from back east, Chicago.
Can't hope where our parents
Glenn?
are.
I just want to make a statement that I'm Glenn Cassidy. I've been here for 25 years serving this community, and I can tell you right now, I don't care where he comes from, and I'm probably speaking for all firefighters. We stand behind you.
Bravo.
Thank you, Glenn. Any comment from the public? Dave?
I'm going to make a comment because I am a volunteer here. And I walked in at age 65 thinking that if I was lucky enough to be a volunteer, they were going to have me serving coffee to people and sweeping the floor. And I got asked, are you willing to go interior? And I said, do you mean like of a burning building? And they said, yeah. I'm like, oh yeah, if I can get the training for that. And it has been stated by some people in this room and some people who have only shown up at a couple other meetings where the consolidation thing came up. It's been all over social media that the paid union staff here has made volunteers feel unwelcome, that they have changed the standards to make it so volunteers can't really fit in here. And I'm calling BS as someone who has walked the walk and continues to, maybe not so much on my hobbling foot now. It's BS. And I was welcomed in here with open arms. I have been offered training up one side and down the other. I've been all kinds of different training, and some of the people in this room have put me through that training. It's pretty exciting to drive a fire engine through traffic, lights and siren. It's awesome, but the whole thing of feeling unwelcome is just utter BS. I was welcomed with open arms. I've made rookie mistakes that maybe if I was them, I would have run me out for, but I got enough. But true. But I've been accepted and continued to work with, and I speak for other volunteers as well. Those who show up and are willing to put in the time and the training and the requirements for training, we're talking about not just training, but training and service together. I think it's a 12-hour month is the minimum. If I'm 12 shift hours, 12 total hours, 4 of those have to be. Yeah, so 8 hours on a shift and 4 of training. I mean, that's not a big ask. And so I just want to put those rumors to rest because they're utter lies, and they get told to help put down the request for a levy because and if you're the only way you can make the levy sound untenable is to put forth lies up one side and down the other. That says a lot about that side that was in opposition to what we're trying to do. So, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I, on the volunteer thing real quick?
Yes.
He talked about training and requirements. Yeah, we have training requirements, and we have training that you have to go through. And I saw a comment on Facebook that said, volunteer first and foremost, don't worry about training, just learn as you go. Do you understand what would happen to me as a fire chief? Do you understand that we would get sued out of existence if we did not properly outfit and train volunteer firefighters? The requirements that he's just talking about, I actually looked at as increasing, and then when we hired this last group of folks, we decided we weren't going to increase that, but that we were going to nudge them towards getting more. Wink, wink, you need to really be here more often. I don't think I need to spend time on that comment, but I need people to understand that yes, we have requirements. And yes, if you are going to go inside of a structure fire, first of all, I'm going to make sure that you have the physical ability to do that job. Second of all, I'm going to make sure that we can get you out of that structure fire because firefighters get trapped. And for me to do anything other than that, or do what other volunteer departments around here do, which just, I'm going to throw you on the roster so I can build this big roster so I can sit in front of my bosses and say, I have 60 firefighters on my roster. But these guys are showing up at structure fires in jeans and tennis shoes. What are they doing in jeans and tennis shoes? Let's have a real, let's cut, now that the levy's over, let's cut through the crap.
Yep.
And actually have a conversation about what it means to be a volunteer firefighter. Are people doing it or not people doing it, and why are we actually having requirements of folks? If somebody comes through the door and they're not physically able to climb up on the back of that engine and pull that hose off without having a cardiac event or without looking like they're going to have a cardiac event, I'm probably not going to put them on as a volunteer. And that's the facts, right? Because what if I do, right, have a bunch of people say Dave came through and decided, hey, I don't want to do this. And by the way, he joined as a volunteer before he became a commissioner, I believe, correct?
Way before.
Yeah. I put a couple people on there and they're running a call and they're not physically able to do the job, and they pull up in front of Mrs. Smith's house and they set the parking brake and they get out and they have to go inside that structure and get somebody out, but they're not physically able to do it. And they get inside, and once they get that person and they start carrying them out, they realize, I can't do this, and they become a victim themselves. Right? We're talking about life and death. Then on the volunteer thing, you're also asking somebody to come in here and risk their life. And I'm not being melodramatic, but there are incidents where our folks are putting their life between the citizens and the incident. And you're asking somebody that works at North 40 to come in and do that at 2 o'clock at night when they have kids and a wife at home and they have to be up at 6 o'clock and go to work. And by the way, they can't be late to work because their boss will fire them. That's my piece. Thank you.
Perfect.
Yes.
My name is Tim Gift. I'm a resident of Northside. Would you mind walking up so you could get on the recording? Thank you. I'm also a retired firefighter. Commissioner Roof, do you know what the final voter turnout was this time? I know in our precinct and the precinct that's in the same building that we were in, it was about 20%.
Yeah, I can do that to you. Just give me a moment. It was right around 24%.
Okay.
And it was the same as the
27.
last.
I think it was 27% of voters.
Of Northside.
I'll have to print out things.
Yeah, Northside specific. Whatever that number is, the vast majority of the voters, for whatever reason, whether it was lack of interest, lack of knowledge, I was amazed at the number of folks that I talked to that had no clue that any of this was even going on in the weeks leading up to the election. Fact remains, the vast majority of the taxpayers and voters in Northside did not weigh in on this. So the fact that it crossed the 50% threshold compared to the levy in May, everybody I talked to, 90% of them didn't understand the difference between May and this levy. But when you explain exactly what's going on, most people thought that it was a pretty reasonable request. And I think that the increase in percentage of voters that voted yes this time reflects a little bit greater understanding. But it's 50% of 25%. I don't have the answer as to how to increase the public awareness, but I think the community understanding the issues the chief's bringing up today in a more in-depth way may rethink whether that, in my case, $50 a year that you were asking for is reasonable or unreasonable. Because all the things you're talking about today, honestly, is still just going to be a Band-Aid. At some point, you know, the county budget's gone up by almost $16 million since fiscal year 2020.
We only get 3% because it's based on.
Correct. But the county budget you all just signed off on was over $75 million for next year, correct?
About.
Yeah, so without ever having to come to the voters to ask for additional funds. Fire district, it's a much smaller population. You don't have some of the options that the county does. But I would ask you to not give up on the levy process. I don't have the answer to increasing public awareness and engagement, but all the stuff you're talking about today, realistically, a couple of years down the road, you know, with costs of everything, workers' comp, insurance, all this stuff increases. Pretty tough to go down to 0 people on a truck. So you know, long term, if the citizens of the community want fire protection of any sort, they're going to have to get more involved, either by writing a check, coming out, training, and getting on the truck. Something's going to give, because even with all the changes being discussed today, with the growth, the increased demands for services, that's still not going to put us on a long-term sustainable track. So, anyway.
In response to your question, it was 23.5% turnout for this one, and last turnout was 24.5%.
So almost 80% of the people in the district didn't weigh in for whatever reason. So I'll say equally as important is for people to get involved and run to be a precinct committee person in your Republican Central Committee to help offset the lies that get put forth, the kinds of lies that I was just talking about. They're all over the place, and we have a voter population here who I'm going to say, I don't have firm numbers because I can't, but I'll say 80-85%, maybe more, walk into that voting booth, if they go at all, and do whatever the Central Committee tells them they should do without actually understanding the reality. And when you have 80% or so of that Central Committee made up of people from the politically active Christians that are, for some reason, out to destroy the fire department, I don't know why, this is what we get. So when you have citizens that stay at home and don't participate, this is the result.
Any additional comments?
Discussion.
Bernie.
once again, I didn't mean to put my fellow commissioners from West Side on the hot seat, so to speak. It was more of a rhetorical question, so I apologize. Thank you for stopping me before I committed some egregious offense. But once again, I apologize, gentlemen. I'm sure perhaps our paths will cross at future meetings.
Anything additional? Chief? Any additional comments from the general public? I don't think we're going to make any decisions today. We have a lot of information we have to mull over and come up with a good educated decision that'll be beneficial to the citizens of Northside Fire District and the community as a whole. Yes?
Would you be holding any workshops prior to making any formal decisions?
I certainly would be willing to.
I don't see any.
You're out, I don't know if it's going to generate enough warning.
Yeah, I don't see why we couldn't have a workshop or two, you know, similar to what we do
calendar
with
next week?
budgets and everything else. You know, we put it out there, put it on multimedia for people to come into the meetings. We've adjusted our meeting times, but it just like I said before, this is the most people we've had at a meeting in a long time. You know, we've tried it in the mornings, we've tried it in the evenings, we've tried later in the evenings, we've tried other days, and it just doesn't work. I know that West Side does the same thing, and Sago has done the same thing. Playing around with trying to get more public involved, but it just,
Tell them to watch.
everybody's busy. So, Asa.
Can I offer that, what if we did it, and maybe this will go to Dave or Armstrong, a commissioner chat using the county, the way we've done discussions before, and try and advertise specifically a discussion on the budget that can be recorded and shared, but disseminated throughout the community, and reaching out to the Republican Central Committee, asking them for their issues and concerns as it relates to the budget, so that those things can be answered and recorded, so that that can be kind of disseminated in a way that's very clear, but giving enough time for the public to participate with that. Because we have had good luck with that on other issues.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying right or wrong. I think levy inherently in most communities is irritating, period. Because it feels like only a certain population is being taxed because it goes off of your property tax. But part of what I think is happening here is, I have seen the comments on Facebook. It's not just fact-based.
No.
And so if we just did a fact-based, here's the budget, with a pre-discussion of what are your questions, and asking the people that are the dissenting opinions, so that your discussion is, Asia said that we waste money on engines, therefore here's our engine expenses. This is accurate or it's inaccurate. And if it's accurate accusation, this is how we're going to fix it. If it's inaccurate, then it's dispelled, but it's recorded. I would offer that as an option, because I think that part of what's happening is you guys need a bigger audience, and it needs to be clear. And then as you go, if you choose to run another levy, as you go throughout the community, you'll have a resource that you can use, which has been helpful. Because even when I've done this with like Disney, for example, they're going after another huge change, and they called me to say I need to do an updated commissioner chat because we've grown since the last one. I'll offer it for you guys to reach out to see if that's a good option, but if you did that, I would argue, why not reach out to the chair of Central Committee to say, what are your concerns? Because even if I don't answer you in writing and you ask me what my position is, then I've given you information. If I answer you, then I've given you a direction, because partly you have an organization that is disseminating information. I'm not going to judge whether it's true or not. It's getting disseminated in a way that's hard to fight, because you guys are smaller and you don't have the budget for that. But you might have a meeting of the minds of if you were going to run it again.
So just so you know, I've met with Scott, and just so you know, I sent him all the documents I had on Northside, from demographics to our our capital needs to what our current budget was, and I said, this is your opportunity to come be a part of the solution. Because this is what we hear from the public, right? They love to yell in the echo chamber. They love to tell us everything that we're doing wrong, and then they walk out that door and leave us no solutions. I said in an email to Commissioner Ruth, and I kind of half mean this seriously. It's like a 49.9% serious statement. Things were much better when we just made a decision in a vacuum, right? Because my nature is to be civic engagement. My nature is to get the public involved. Like, I've been in the fire service my entire career, and I've never been hated so much. I've never been torn down, destroyed, talked bad about, like I do here.
The wrong name for a couple of weeks, you have to forgive me.
Well, no. But I'm saying, but what we want, and we love this involvement, don't get me wrong, but what we want is real solutions, not people to say, get more volunteers, or you should do this, or you should do that. So yes, I support that, and I would nominate Commissioner Ruth to sit on that with you.
I will hear that, and I will respond with, on the 21st of this month, we have our Region 1 discussion. I messaged you on that. It's supposed to be all of our elected officials, and at some point there needs to be a direction that says, Legislative District 1 and LD2, you guys represent us. How are you addressing the issues that come from how we fund at the state level? In theory, all of those people should be in that room, and I think there needs to be a collaborative approach that says, what are you doing for the people that you represent in this section? And then holding your elected officials accountable also for carrying the water forward, because for me, that's what I do when I go to do everything, is I'm saying, this is what my section needs. And I think that that's a beneficial tool, because then when you have those open discussions, you can say, I asked Asia to tell me why she keeps knocking Northside and she won't answer. It discredits that kind of a comment. So I also just texted Commissioner Bowman the Rural Health Transformation Grant. It's not something you can apply for as Northside, but it's happening and it's already funded from the federal government to look at not just its rural areas, but they're specifically trying to address how do you financially support the personnel aspect of it. And so that's something to keep on your radar as well. I push hard for our county to let the governor know we want money, but we have to know, we have to be part of a conversation so that as we're talking that we're mentioning it in those other circles. So I invited you guys to attend that. You've attended that before. The Region 1 that behaved, or for the top 5 northern counties. And if we're bringing our issues of funding from the state level together as the top 5, we sound louder. And then I would also say arguing at the Idaho Association of Counties to start pushing for legislation that addresses the issue of funding, because if you can write a resolution, I sit on intergovernmental affairs and you put it forward, it just doesn't fix the now problem, but that's the long-term fix of something. So we have to attack it from both sides.
Yep. Yeah, we've had members of the Republican committee come here, and all they wanted to do is compare us to West Monterey and Priest Lake. But we would ask them for what their suggestions are, and they never would come back. They've only been to a few meetings.
I think you have people in this room right now that sit on that table.
There might be.
Yes, we do.
And I think that maybe it's instead of asking in your meeting that might not have as many people, but doing something publicly that puts on notice of, I'm asking the Republican Central Committee, because it's not enough to call a problem, you have to be part of the solution to the problem.
Correct.
So if we're not going to pass the levy, how do we make sure that your firefighters don't jump ship because there's a funding issue, because you're looking at, we're going to get rid of somebody? That's an issue.
And that's already happening, not just with the fire service, but also with law enforcement.
Yep, and it's,
we were that area of people that come to, firefighter and law enforcement, but now the dynamics have changed, and everybody's coming here, get trained, and they jump. Volunteer and career. I've witnessed it in my 37 years being here. Because I'm a retired firefighter also. I spent 37 years here in Sanford.
But I'm wide open to a commissioner chat, and I think that's what you were first suggesting, right? And any of these others, I'm more than willing to participate.
I'm willing to ask Central Committee Chair, to ask those questions of what are the issues with the funding. Did you get answers from the chair? No answer.
I followed up with an email to remind him, and I sent that, and I asked him to meet after the levy, because I didn't want to walk into a meeting and have that noise. So I said, post levy, let's get together and let's talk about what are the solutions on the table. I mean, I'm giving you black and white the budget. You can be mad at me, you can be upset, but at the end of the day, we're all looking at the same spreadsheet. And so is the answer to drop to one person on a fire truck? Is the answer to be a volunteer organization, which we can argue about that all day? I mean, I want somebody to tell us how to fix it, and we'll execute it. There's people that want us to be all volunteer again. That's fine. But when someone doesn't respond to Walmart on fire, don't come yelling at me.
Or Mrs. Smith.
Yes.
Just tying into what Asia mentioned about the chat, I would suggest that you widen it out to include the other fire districts, because the elements that you've discussed already today, we're in the same boat. You may be a little further down the road than Dover or Salem, but the elements are all the same. Your method for achieving solvency would be the same issues that we would have. So this chat can be broader than just talking about Northside, although it's important. But the solutions coming out of it would benefit all of us. I think having that kind of a venue shows that the shortfalls that you're experiencing is the same things that we're experiencing.
Yeah.
And that's what we need to sell it to the public. This is not an isolated thing. And when you run with one firefighter and an engine, and that firefighter goes home sick, you're down to zero. There's no more fire department after that. And so we need to put it on a platform that gets it out to the public, hopefully, and can change some minds going forward.
Did our consultant reach out to you, Tim Nowak?
Yes, I meet with him next week.
Awesome. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, but the other thing I was going to say is it might be worth looking at Chief England's progress with the 2-year, the temporary levy, to see if he can show you where he financially benefited. And that might be something also to pull into it, a broader discussion of if you were going to run a 2-year, a temporary, because the feedback I heard from the people that voted no, it actually was because it was permanent. That was a lot of what people said to me was it was because it was permanent and they weren't ready for permanent at this time. And so one of the questions I would ask also of the chair of Central Committee, he has advertised that he's running for senator and that he wants to remove property tax. And so maybe there's an option for asking him his plan for how you would fund fire so that we have some. We can't just say get rid of the tax. We have to say this is a plan, and maybe that he's created a plan that he's pushing forward from that venue. I don't know.
Don't bet the farm on it.
I don't have
I asked him about the plan on Facebook a year ago or 2 years ago. And full disclosure, like before I was the fire chief, I went and met with him a couple times. Like he was my guy, right? And I asked him, and there was a conversation about a state budget surplus, and I was like, we can't go to a state budget surplus to fund like local governments, right? Because I mean that's and I'm biased, right? I'm in the fire department. I want to know how we're getting funded. I've also had some experience with sales tax and understanding how to budget for a sales tax when that's not always the same number coming in. I know we're limited by that. So yes, I will do that, and I'm not trying to rebut your suggestions with saying I've already done that. I just want you to know, like I have withdrawn a little bit recently, but at nature, I'm a relationship guy, and that's what I did, right? Even as the deputy chief, I was out there doing all that stuff, so Gilcrease didn't have to. But when I don't get any...
I'm only changing it from, I know you did it because you email me all the time. I'm saying expose it and make it open. Because it's not working, and when it's behind closed doors and people don't know that those questions are being asked and not answered, or they're not getting a response of this is what's wrong, they don't know. They only know the placard that goes in the mail. And so if it's in an open format, it gives you something to point back to here we were having, and I agree with Commissioner Glass that if you expand it to addressing fire in Bonner County, that it allows for a think tank operation of fine, you want volunteers. Some people have been saying that a lot, but where are the volunteers? And here's the cost of a volunteer. Here's the leakage out of my budget that says I paid this person's fees of over $1,200, and then now they work for Ponderay County versus being at the fire station that paid the benefit. That might be beneficial, and have the conversation with Commissioner Cornum. What's your plan of how you would get more volunteers? Because when we had the big fires, there were people talking online about the people claiming about volunteers of maybe they're helping, but that wasn't the case. We don't have to trade barbs. We can say, here's the format. Give us a solution and invite people intentionally to come with a solution for the budget if we don't want to do any levies. That's kind of my thing, is because I agree, you messaged a lot, you messaged the county about how we drain your personnel on some aspects of our functions that are not fire, but statutorily there's a requirement. We need to be open about that so that the community knows what we're draining on fire services, so that it's an informed citizen, not just a person. Because your problem is, until you have a presidential election, the voters' turnout is very low when it's not a voter election or a presidential election. That's part of the problem.
I have a kind of follow-up question. It's just all four of us, whoever has the answer. There's a lot of people, and I was one of them when I first started coming to these meetings. I mean, I first started coming to say, how can I help you with your volunteer program? My question is, not how many people say we should have volunteers, because I was one of them. How many people in the last 18 months have come to one of the 3 districts and expressed an interest in being a volunteer?
5, 6.
Okay.
I've been approached at county meetings, but there's no follow-through.
And how many volunteers would it take to get, if you were lucky and got 10% of your volunteers to respond on an alarm? How many volunteers would you need to make that effective? 60 between the 3 districts? 60, 70, 80?
So it's a 1 for 5.
Okay.
So for every 5 volunteers you have on the books, you can count on 1.
Okay, so 20%.
Yep.
So
And that's based on availability, things going on. Somebody gets, there's a structure fire at 4 in the morning, but they have to be at work at 6. They're not going to take that alarm, right? So it takes into consideration soccer on the weekends.
And we've had, in the last 18 months, a handful of people expressing interest.
Yeah, I would say 6 would be a very generous number. And we had the first academy that I was a part of here. We brought 5 through the door. And how many of those remain? 2? The third's questionable. And then, but that's the thing, we don't see them for months, right? And then we call them in here and we say, hey, what's going on with you? And we either have a sit down with them and talk about requirements, or they get frustrated and leave, and then they go out in the community and go, these guys were mean to us. Or you have the one that came up at the other meeting where somebody came in here and they said, we want to run medical aids as a volunteer, and we want you to inspect our AEDs so we can run around with lights and sirens on our personal vehicle and run calls. First of all, that's illegal, like illegal. Second of all, think about the liability of that, right? So we basically said, yeah, that's not our program. And then that made its way into the Bonner County Central Committee as we turned away these volunteers and we were rude to them. Now, I can't speak to how that interaction went. That interaction was probably weird because we don't get people that say, I have an AED, can I run around and run calls for you? It's just not the model we have. So I wasn't there present for that, but when I drilled down into that, so those are the things you hear out in the community that people, and they take that as fact, and they raise it on the flagpole and run through the community with it. If these guys are turning away volunteers, and it's like, well...
There's another follow-up question, and it has to do with the Fair Labor Standards Act. So a lot of people will advocate, and I worked in a system when I very first started. It was like this, and then it was, of course, overturned by the law. People will suggest, well, you should have a minimum requirement of hours of attendance. But that runs afoul of the Fair Labor Standards Act. Now they're no longer volunteers. If you're requiring attendance to participate, that it's not volunteers.
And Vern's the expert at that, and that's why we had to start compensating them.
Yeah, we can't turn them into indentured service, and there is a cost?
Well, I started that way. $50 a month for a minimum of 48 hours of service.
And you know, it used to be that way, volunteer, you have to no pay, but.
I never got anything.
I got a smile and a handshake.
Yeah, that's what I got. Oh wait, don't say a word, Cassidy. Any other additional comments, discussion?
Yeah, I got something. I don't know if you go aware or not, I know there's a handful of retired folks here, and obviously the staff is here, but the recommendation, excuse me, the recommendation for a down firefighter is 12 firefighters to rescue. That one down firefighter. That hits home for me because I've had, two within 6 months line of duty deaths in my family. So, talking volunteers, talking the career staff here, you know, I trust my crew today, and I hope they trust me too. Obviously, you know, we have almost that bare minimum, but there's also a lot of other operations going on the fire ground. Like she was saying, the 5 to 1, you know, for every 5 you get 1. If, God forbid, something happened today, we don't even have enough people to make the recommendation, right, to make a rescue for one of us to go down. So, I mean, we can talk volunteers all day long, we can talk all of that, but we don't even have the bare minimum to rescue a single firefighter. So that's just something to keep in mind for folks.
Vern, anything else? Dave? Chief? Anything else from the group? All right. I think we need
You want a motion?
motion.
I would love to step up and make that motion to adjourn this meeting.
I'll go ahead and second the motion.
Been moved and seconded to adjourn this special meeting of the Northside Fire District. It is 10:45, November 6th. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Cool.
And we will continue these discussions.
I hope he does.